Okay, we're going live right now.
Hi, YouTube.
I hardly recognize me. Dun, dun, dun.
Antony,
There we are.
the costume change was amazing. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
I had a lot of fun.
We're definitely live on YouTube now. Apologies again for that technical difficulty. The rename button and the remove button are right next to each other on Zoom, and I accidentally removed one of our group members from the final Zoom call. And so we readjusted so that Emily could be back with us to talk about some design things, and that's what we have for you tonight. To get us all started off with our design process, we've got Antony to talk about some scenic stuff.
Should we give it just a couple minutes? Because we only have 3 people on the stream at the moment.
You know what? You're right. Let's give it. Oh, we've got
Let
4.
people rejoin, and I'm one of those people, so.
I'm also one of those people.
I am one of those people too.
Yes, same.
You guys, the only people watching it are us.
Hey, there were some comments on there.
I'm proud that you guys could support us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, everybody.
I'm my biggest fan, everyone.
Oh, I have. Why do I have Della added? Let's see Della's fan.
Katie is.
I subscribe to Della.
Yeah, I subscribe to Della.
All right, folks. We do, have a bit of a time crunch. So, Antony, do you have some scenic stuff for us?
Yeah, just give me one moment to pull it up real quick. I was working on other technical things.
So while Antony pulls that up, I'll explain too a little bit of our process. Obviously, this class is called Creative Collaboration, and so all of the work we're about to present to you is stuff that we all had a hand in creating. The people who are going to be talking most about it probably had a larger hand in creating it than some of the rest of us, but it was something that the 9 of us worked on together with a little bit of help from our professor, Johanna, to create.
Hey, Della, it tells me that the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh my goodness. If I never have to use Zoom again.
Me too, so.
All right, I'll share the screen. Is it in the Google Drive?
Yes. Go to presentations on design, and then they're all in there.
It's fine. I'm assuming final scenic design is the one you want.
Maybe not, because I thought we were going to edit it more and
Not
then I
that
never
one.
did.
Just
It should be like scenic research or scenic design.
scenic research.
There we go, folks. I found it.
All right. Well, let me kick this off. Let me just say that I was part of the scenic design / research team, as were Emily Crawford and Michelle Vang. So here at the beginning, we started off with some inspirational images. These are from a lot earlier in the semester, even before coronavirus was a thing. Imagine that, a time before time. We really liked the more naturalistic things. We like the texture of like wood and stone, and like, but with some like green thrown in for some moss. We love like the flowing, like the rippling, but those natural textures are what we were envisioning. We definitely we were thinking this would be ideal in a proscenium layout, because there's a lot of potential stage magic in this show that could be helped a great deal by having a back wall or things like Foley effects and stuff like that. Is there some more specific? Brinks, do you want to take a talk about this? Because I think you added these images.
Yeah, sure. And so in terms of like textures, because everything looks really rough with like the rocks and everything, because our world involves a lot of rocks. And so when you think of rough things, you think of rocks, so like bricks, which comes to mind. And so just some color palettes we were thinking is like gray or white or brown and yellows and just very rough and earthy kind of things. Same goes for like buildings or like pillars that we want for the show, rocky textures.
We love the stone forest. Oh my God, stone forest is like the peak. Like it's ideal, like if our set could look like this, but like imagine that these wavy rocks are like interchangeable and can form different set like locations and like pieces and stuff. It's cool because it's abstract and yet fits exactly what we would need. More rocks, different kinds of rocks. We're getting into more specifics for the actual like scenery. Like for the opening scene where Cassandra is addressing the audience, or like the scenes in the future where it's been destroyed and stuff like that. We have this wonderful busy village that's like the kind of energy we would like to capture. When we did our midterm presentation, we had as Cassandra was delivering the opening monologue, we had everybody else in the ensemble played extras for that scene and kind of formed a busy village up until Upapone interrupted. And that's what we'd like to capture in that scene. This cave is kind of at a little bit an example of lighting, but this would be the monster fight scene, which was another one of our midterm scenes, which ended up being actually very fleshed out for what we could do in our classroom. It was kind of amazing. But using the lights and darks and layers of the stone is ideal. The ship, it's next because it's kind of parallel with that scene, but instead of random rocks kind of being illuminated, it would be things like crates, ropes, the bars of Ormond's cage, the torches that the soldiers are holding, things like that in the darkness as Ormond slays them all. The gods are in a cool, unspecific place, whether it's more natural with stones or maybe they all have chairs, like it's a conference room. I really think the easel is kind of really funny. It would be ideal if Opapone had a generic presenting easel, maybe with some graphs and charts. That's just it's a fun idea. We have like 3 tent scenes in this play. We have Ormond's big fancy tent, which is followed by the healer's tent. And before all that, we have the captain and Ormond's soldier tent. And these are all examples of different like levels of tent. And ideally we could use the same tent set and just arrange it differently for each of these scenes. The image on the left is fancier. The one on the bottom right is multiple beds, so more like an infirmary. And the one on the top right is more of a generic soldier's tent.
Great.
And yeah, that ends our brief explanation on some of the scenic designs that we brought.
So now we're moving forward to lighting research imagery. If I can share it again.
And the lighting group was again comprised of myself, Emily Crawford, and Micah Eigenfeld. Some of our, Emily, would you like to take this? I've been doing a lot of talking.
Emily?
Yeah, I can totally talk about it. So these were just different ways, like just inspiration photos, like the one with the trees. We thought that would be really fun with the idea of casting shadows onto things. Because if you could imagine the trees being lit like directly on them and what would show up on the floor and how that would affect the actors in the stage. And yes, just more inspiration pictures. Lightning kind of reminded us of the gods. Umbrella, just cool colors for like, and then there's like burning down and regrowth with the forest. Super fun ecology. Just more of that same idea, and that tree one kind of reflects what I was saying earlier with the other tree picture.
Cave is great. We love the cave, playing with like silhouettes, like Orman fighting the monster, stuff like that, and the layers of rock.
And
The cave was also a part too, where like before we stopped meeting in person for school, we had been playing around with this scene and really exploring light and the possibilities there.
Mhm. And something that I personally really liked about what we had achieved, even in our classroom space with our cave scene, was we would, for the fight with the monster, we would just kind of flash the lights on, and then it would kind of leave you with like this after image that would just be like stuck in your eye. Even if the light was out and there was just darkness, you would just kind of have like this snapshot of like what was happening in that moment that I thought was really cool.
So the ship, what we thought would be cool, because with the scenic, we plan on having a still scenery without much like scene changes, more of like aspects of it changing. We really like the idea of having the lighting create the ship environment, with light on Orman and a little bit on the ship captain, but basically make it feel like he's surrounded in a cage with the scenery kind of disappearing into the darkness. So it'd be dim lighting, kind of casting shadows through like, I don't know, Gobo or something. And then Pirates of the Caribbean, always a good choice with ship cages. Tent scenes. I didn't take a huge part in this, but we kind of like the idea of like the glow of a tent.
I think the idea that we were trying to get across with these was just the look of light being diffused through fabric like that. And I mean, I don't think we would actually be setting up like any big swaths of fabric to shine light through, but we would definitely be trying to find like gel to use to tint the light to give it that sort of glow of coming through a warm fabric like that. And then here is some lighting ideas we had for the gods, specifically when there are multiple of them. And we've got some different ideas, though my favorite is the one with the people in the hula get up stuff, because in my head, the gods are just, they stick out like a sore thumb, like these people do. And I imagine that they just, lighting wise, they would have a lot of light put on them, and then we would work with the costumes to come up with something that could also like reflect the light back to give them kind of a illuminating glow, both because they're supposed to be godly figures, but also because they stick out. So yeah.
Red City, and also by extension the previous scenes of Desolation and Cassandra's Village, really just like throwing a lot of red down, really using the lighting to kind of highlight the fact that the world is more blood-soaked. There's fire and destruction. Maybe in the earlier Desolation scene in Cassandra's Village, maybe the top right image where it's more just some rubble and some more orangish fire grays, but then in the biggest one in the capital Canis, that would be very dramatically lit. Some more inspiration for the gods. Especially.
Yeah, we definitely. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, these I believe are, because we've got the gods earlier where there's multiple, but then the other one was when there's just one and it's supposed to be bright illuminating.
So that's lighting. I'd also take a moment to link down below in the description of this stream and the last stream is some additional design material and that kind of thing, including Micah made a soundscape for the like marketplace scene, which would definitely be listened to best via the link rather than us trying to like share it with you now. But Mike, you want to talk for a second about what went into creating that?
I mean, yeah, again, you'll have to just kind of listen to it on your own if you're interested. But it was just kind of trying to create like an atmosphere and an environment that fit the tone of what I think we were trying. Because when we were conceptualizing the show, we all were very much on the same page of like how we wanted it to feel, and so I just tried to find a way to orally create that using, songs and sound effects. And the soundscape actually does kind of go through a few different specific sections within the play. So it's got the marketplace, and then I tried to recreate the cave battle that we had from class, and then I also had when he's captured in the ship, and then also I created a soundscape for the destruction scene. So there's 4 distinct sections within that, and yeah, I just tried to create like just setting the mood using sounds.
Yeah, so it's very cool. Go take a listen. Also linked below, in addition to Micah's soundscape, is a lot of world building materials that we put together. Emily Mattingley did a ton of work on the like lore of the play that we created together. And so there's information about the history of the wars that we interacted with, the gods, and then there's actually a map of the land that we created that I'm going to show with you now. It was up for a brief moment at the beginning of the last stream, actually. So this is, you can see, we have Grapuela in the mountains over here, the Blasted Pass, Wacasa's like area over here. Here's the Red City, Canis. Yeah, all these just beautiful places. So definitely go take a look at all of that material down, and like even this wonderful, I mean, Emily is also a graphic design major, but like, yeah. Do you want to talk about the creation of this map?
Sure. Full disclosure, this was made with an online tool called Incarnate, typically used for Dungeons and Dragons maps. It lent itself very well to this. That being said, the actual creation of this map happened quite early into the writing of the actual script, and a lot of this world building stuff actually happened in tandem with writing the script.
Yeah, that segues perfectly into talking about our writing process. So I have a couple questions for like the rest of my class to ask them about writing, even though I was like there for some of it. But if you have any questions, those of you watching at home, and you want to just throw them in the chat for the YouTube live stream,
we would love
to answer those as well. So as I mentioned before, this class is called Creative Collaboration, and we started off our semester by learning a method of theatrical making called moment work, and spent a lot of our time in class together before coronavirus happened and we all had to go our separate ways, creating moments of this play together. And so rather than necessarily like sitting down and writing the entire script, we kind of like fleshed out bits and pieces as we needed them. So does anyone remember what our first moment that we created was?
Yeah, it was the prologue.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember exactly. So yeah, the prologue came first, but then after that, for our midterm for this class, we had to present 3 distinct like moments from our piece. And so we had the prologue, which is like Cassandra in the marketplace introducing our story, but then we jumped all the way to Ormond fighting the monster in the cave. And we talked about that earlier. It was a really cool thing that we did together. And then after that, we moved to the destruction of one of the cities. It wasn't really specified at that point which one it was, I don't think. I think it was the village, but and Cassandra just experiencing that desolation and that kind of thing. So actually the moments in the script that have, I think, the least amount of dialogue are the ones that we like already put on its feet, and that kind of thing. But moving forward for that, how would you guys say our collaboration has worked? How has the writing gone, the creation of this story gone?
It was. I'm not the one to start talking. It was a fun process, a very long and arduous process, but there was a lot of give and take in writing, I think it would be fair to say. Pretty straightforward, though. I think we worked directly through both acts pretty well without like jumping forward or backwards, aside from the midterm moments. After we did Act 1, after we finished writing Act 1, we took it and workshopped it with the rest of the class, made edits, we did the same with the second one, second act as well.
Yeah, so obviously once we stopped being able to just like be in this space together and like feel things out and create and jump around, we kind of realized that a more analog like way of approaching theater creation was going to have to happen. So we decided to like do a script and then create some design elements at the same time. While all of the writing was going on too, though, Emily was creating all this world building extra material. And so yeah, writers, do you want to talk about how that collaboration helped you in the creation of the script?
I thought it was really fantastic. So, I mean, there was no school, so we were able to meet like every day for like 2 to 3 hours. And every time we had a question about the world or a character, we could always either ask Emily if she had something ready, or we'd all work together and create that part of the world that we didn't have yet. Yeah, Zach?
I definitely think that like because we had like a team of people working on it, it turned out a lot better than it would have, because we had so many different like viewpoints, and when somebody would get stuck, they'd be like, hey, how do I make this work? And then we'd all like take a crack at it and go with the way we felt communicated the story best. It would have been really interesting if we got to stay on campus, because I do realize that like when we were doing like physical moment work and we had that opportunity to be in class together, we probably would have had more scenes without dialogue where we could just show rather than tell. But when you have to write everything out, it kind of lends itself to a more dialogue heavy place.
I mean, the show that we ended up writing was about an hour long, and being honest, if it wasn't for this Zoom University, I feel like we probably wouldn't have actually like had the time to write as much as we did, which I find very interesting. By not having the normal class, we accomplished something else. I don't know if it was worse. I don't think it was better or worse, but it was different. And
I think it was better. I will say like what we turned out here tonight is certainly a different show than what we would have created if we were all still in the same space. But that said, I think we held true to a lot of our original ideas and that kind of thing. And I want to talk about the characters we included tonight, but before we do that, I think it's helpful to talk about what our initial idea was and kind of how we ended up putting this together. Like, where did the inspiration come from and what was important to us throughout the process?
The first idea that I had when we started creative collaboration way back in January, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we made a play that starred a very what's the word? A very average, a hero going about the hero's journey, but it was a parody of the hero's journey, and it would be a comedy. And that was my idea. And then
I said no. I don't like funny plays. I didn't want to do a comedy.
That's not what happened entirely.
Yeah.
It was the next step.
I remember that the three ideas that we had like in like our first brainstorming session that we went with were the hero's journey, a setting that is not a setting that we typically see in plays. So like some place outside of like the Christian / Greek / Roman like worldview, just some place that we don't often see. We ended up going fictional, but like, yeah. And then the third one was the myth of Cassandra, which I think other people
Emily
can
brought-
explain
I
better than I can.
Yeah, Emily brought that in. So
Yes.
So-
It is
Yeah, recap the myth of Cassandra.
okay. SparkNotes version of the myth of Cassandra. Here we go. Okay. So Cassandra was a oracle of Apollo. This is a Greek myth, who was cursed to have no one ever believe her. No one would ever believe the prophecies she told. So what ended up happening is she lived in Troy. We all know how Troy turned out. Nobody listened when she said, "Hey, Troy's about to get destroyed. We should be careful." So proven that you should listen to people when they say things are about to get real, specifically women.
Yeah, and so as a class, I think we kind of like honed in on this idea of like who listens to and who gets to tell the story. And is that story listened to and heard and that kind of thing, which is I think something that's been prevalent in our world for the last couple of years a lot. And so we had to combine this idea of wanting not your average like Greek gods telling the story, and we wanted to investigate who tells the story, but we also were interested in the hero's journey, but also interested in subverting the hero's journey. We ended up with a really interesting cast of characters, guys. So do we want to talk about those people at all?
What a fucking segue.
Sure.
honestly,
Wow.
the way that we talk about it now, it sounds like a hot mess of a play. It really does.
It's
We
a
did-
mix of everything.
We
Okay.
collaborated and cleaned it up nice and tidy.
Yes. So I believe we were talking about characters, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Share screen that presentation.
Yes, I will pull it up. Someone start talking about characters while I do that.
It's the first
Yeah,
on the
because
list. It's
the-
Cassandra.
the
I think
people-
mine's the first on the list.
Go, Mia, go.
Okay. So I played Cassandra, which you just saw, and she is we decided not to change her name from the Greek myth of Cassandra, and she is, she's the representation of that myth, of the person who knows what she's talking about but isn't listened to. And it was really interesting when we decided to come up with the idea that the hero should be someone who's really close to Cassandra that doesn't listen to her. But basically, we made this little presentation of all the different characters that is being shown to you right now. And these were images that I found that I thought would be useful in articulating what Cassandra is about. And she's very grounded, logical, very practical. So, but she's also really strong. She's really tough, which I think comes through, especially when, she goes through the desolation of her own village and then also the largest city in their world. She walks through it alone, destroyed, and still manages to come out and keep moving forward. So I think that her journey through the play is really a testament to strength and knowing, being confident in yourself and knowing that you are right in where you're going. So yeah.
And then we've got
There's
Ormond.
also if you go back one slide, there's very importantly a goat in one of
Yes.
the images,
The goat.
which was, while it is kind of a running joke in the play, it was a much larger running joke during the writing meetings. Yeah, now we can go to Ormond. So Ormond. The pictures I chose to represent Ormond kind of had to do with his arc in the play, where how he's got like he's very determined, and after the god visits him, he's very sure of what he has to do, and he stays that way throughout the rest of the play. So I thought the two pictures on top represented that pretty well. And then the two, like the other four pictures represents like how he goes through war and what it shapes him into, where he starts out as this kind of David figure and then ends it as Goliath, kind of in this like horrible spectacle that he turns Canis into. Yeah, if you you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yep. Good job. All right, Bowden.
Yo, we got Bowden. Okay. So Bowden, the mailman, everyone knows him, brings your wares. So he's a traveler. He carries goods and gossip from town to town. So definitely put him in traveler's gear. Him or her. I don't believe we ever decide on whether Bowden was specifically male or female. So wanted to put him in traveler's clothes. You know, he's hiking up and down mountains. He also carries his wares with him. So I kind of leaned towards pictures with, you know, his entire inventory's on his back. So, and also there's other options if people were aged a little more, having a fun cart. Yeah, something fun. Maybe stands out a little in the view of the village. That's kind of what we got for Bowden.
The captain.
The captain. So for the captain, you know, he's uptight, but he's got personality. So kind of looked at different types of armor from around the world. I don't think we ever decided on a specific look for him. But definitely something with something that conveyed a little more prestige. So very polished armors, very maybe not ornate, but in some cases ornate. Armors that conveyed status. Something that conveyed. This is great. Conveyed power. Yeah. So healer. I have this entire block of Tasha. So the healer, we've got our definition of the healer. This is a traditional medicine man or woman. Figured this person would probably be healing through either, you know, herbs, poultices of the sort. So definitely surrounded by green, if not wearing green, white. We associate white definitely with the medical field now. Or also more classical techniques, which could dovetail into this sort of time period roughly that we set this in. So kind of looking at trying to emulate these more fantasy clothing choices, kind of more medieval clothing choices. The Crown Prince. Well, he's got daddy's money. He still has a little bit of fashion sense. I mean, come on. So there was the idea of while he's still a little spoiled brat, he does have some presence, a tiny bit of intimidation under those layers of whininess. So kind of looking at blocky, regal silhouettes, fine clothes, maybe not too overstated, darker colors or jewel tones, maybe some armor. And then Agia. So first things first, there is a picture of Mother Gothel in the middle of this page. I can't ignore that. Agia is clearly manipulative. She clearly lies to get what she wants her son to do. So definitely, for lack of a better word, vibing with the idea of Mother Gothel. So two pictures on the left, we're looking at kind of the idea of the beggar's costume. In a perfect world where we would have costumes. Next three, the swirling vortex of color. possibly an idea for, all the colors in Agia's costume. She is the god of creation. We never decided on gender. We decidedly made the gods genderless. So all the colors that could be in their outfit. Quote about home and creation. And also another thing for the creation, got the whole world in his hand. The idea that Agia is very associated with light. So the idea that all this light that is in the world was in her hands, maybe isn't anymore. Then looking at more visual looks, both masculine and feminine presenting versions of Agia as a god. Very flowy, kind of tying into the other very flowy looks of the other gods you will see in this presentation. Again, brought in the light.
Great.
So I did the character study for Kesa. Basically, the images that I found were, so she is like the god of harvest, and these all looked like very inviting pictures. She kind of looks similar, even though they're all different from different places. They all kind of like show a similar looking person, but I envisioned her to be pretty intelligent, kind of motherly, but at the same time, she's honest. She's very fair. She kind of holds sacred law. So yeah, basically she is someone who is a mother figure, but in the same sense, she is very fair and just and can sometimes be stern.
All right, so like goddess or god of love. I have just had goddess in my mind because, the Greek gods. These are just all images that I associate with it. We've got just at the bottom, like left, there are just different versions of love, which are all important. The top 4 pictures are more of color schemes. Also, like, I love the picture of the cards because, they're using numbers to create it, but also it's just, it's a game, But sorry, cheesy. The heart and then the silhouette of the couple, great color schemes, as well as the rose in the middle, it's just a different type of color scheme. It's like a reimagined of your typical like bright red. And it's a rose is a symbol of love, but it's like muted colors, which I thought was really cool. And then bottom right, it's just mirrors and heads, and I thought, they're probably a little narcissistic, so that'd be fun. And so those I thought all associated with love, and then beauty, it again, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but these are just different versions of beautiful things. The left is a mosque, like a mosque, so it's just like created by human hands. It's architecture, and it's beautiful. It's art. Brain is beautiful. Nature, whatever. Not whatever, but nature is beautiful. It really is. And then the picture of the hair, I imagined that their hair would look like that, just because it's definitely styled in a way, but it also feels very natural. I had to include Marilyn Manson, The Beautiful People, great song. And then the bottom right picture, I thought that was really cool because, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it feels very patchwork. So it can just be a multitude of different things, which it really resonated with me.
Matan.
Right, so I played the god of war and bravery, Matan. And during my character research of them, I kind of imagined that Matan wouldn't necessarily be more masculine or feminine, because I think that when we think of the god of war, we think of Athena, who is more on the feminine side, or the game god of war, someone who is like buff. But because we kind of didn't put a gender on any of these gods, we kind of treat them as higher beings, and so they are much more beyond such mortal concerns, especially with the gender idea. And so in terms of physicality, I imagine someone with a very androgynous look, someone who's not too buff or skinny, but someone who is strong and fit, someone who looks fearless. And I got inspired a lot by warriors. And Matan is an extremely fearless character. They are strategic, they're fierce, somewhat bloodthirsty, and a little bit frightening. But what I love about this character is how outspoken they are and what a sharp tongue Maton's kind of got too. And so these photos that I chose is somewhat similar to how I envision how they would look like. Lots of red and black. I see someone wearing an armor, someone with fierce makeup, and someone who's just holding like a spear or sword just to show superiority and bravery and etc.
Omo.
So for Omo, the life cycle, you just think of life and death. Big important circle of life down in the corner there next to the suit. It was a circle, but it was also a circle is considered like perfect, but it also looks very haphazard. So it's just a combination of both that comes together to create this beautiful thing. Suit, we just imagine this classy god, put together. They know what they're doing, but if you combine like that with the raven, still has this messy part of it, and just this, I don't know, there's this freedom you associate with the bird, which can come with both the life and death part, and then the rest, like the hands and the skull, you have that combination between life and death, but it's very stylized. Dandelions, they're fun because the life and death between that is, this yellow weed to like this white like thing that just disappears into the wind. So yeah.
And Wakaro.
All right, so Wakaro is our god or goddess of knowledge and civilization. And these pictures that I found, to me, they all conveyed a sense of knowing. And as in my head, someone, a god or goddess of knowledge is, if they've got so much knowledge and they just kind of know everything, I feel like they can't help but kind of become like this stoic, disconnected figure who they know everything, and therefore everything just kind of becomes like a facts game and like a numbers game. And so while they do have, that they know everything that there is to know, there's kind of a disconnect. And to me, the images that I think embody this best are the one with the blue smoke coming out of the head, because that just seems like someone is like, they don't really care so much anymore. They just have it all. They know everything. And then also the lady sitting with the orb of light. I think that also conveys a nice sense of just, this is someone who, they've got the knowledge because they are the god or goddess of knowledge.
And last but not least, Opapone.
Hello, everyone. I played Opapone and I made this presentation. I'd also like to remind you that we are taking questions in the comments section, and we would love to answer them. So, Opapone is the god of tricksters and travelers. He definitely likes to have fun. He's a bit of a troublemaker, and that's the dating profile. He's personally involved in the world of men far more than the average god. He's the closest to being human, I think. Opapone is smart enough to get what they want, but they usually don't want too much of epic proportions that would like mess with the world too much, and they don't care too much what the other gods think. With the idea of like being a traveler and a trickster, I had the idea that Opapone could be anybody. Again, with the gods, we decided gender could be fluid, but like I love this image of the hippie in the 60s hitchhiking, because like you can't tell like what they really look like from the back, but you know who they are. These images in those three corners that have like all the items and like the guitar and like that cape, I feel like those would be more from a costume design-ish perspective, because he's got everything on his back, similar to what was said about Odin. Like they're traveling, they're always ready for anything. We got this nice picture with the wide open path. I like this businessman swinging his briefcase because he's like You can tell he's in a suit, but he also looks like pretty carefree. He's on the phone. He's having a good time. And this one with the freaking ducks, I've just imagined that could be like a story, like Opapone carried 150 ducks like across a river or something like that. And then you see this little quote, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother, I'm a sinner, I'm a saint. I imagined that he could be any of them. He appears. They appear as they want, as they wish.
Lovely. Well, thank you all for sharing that research. I know a lot of work went in for this. Catherine Ducalo wants to know what our kind of intended audience was for this piece. I think let's answer both before we split up, and then also now that we've written this final play, kind of who are we writing this for?
Okay, I'll go. I'll take the jump. I think we intended this to be, I don't mean to sound cliche. I think we wanted this to be a show anyone could watch, anyone would want to come watch. Maybe not necessarily families. We do touch on some very violent themes. I mean, again, do what you will with your children. So that was kind of the idea before that. Obviously, our real audience is other theater folk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I was also going to say, I feel like it could be a show for everybody. I mean, we got action sequences, keep the kids entertained. It's like basic enough plot, but like with enough depth for more interested members of the audience. I feel like, and like you mentioned, a lot of violence topics for the family. That's like true, but we don't necessarily like show blood on the stage. I mean, at least not in our version, I don't think so. I feel like it can be open. It's good lessons. Anyone can learn from it.
I will say too,
say-
though, go ahead, Zach.
I'd say if I had to put like an age range on it, like 17 to 35, kind of the younger people who will be making like all the decisions in our society going forward, basically, as they become the largest voting population. And a big theme in this is like who gets listened to. And so maybe if those people think, and like we all can think a little bit more about who we're listening to and who we're ignoring and why that might be. And yeah.
I'd say too, like, I think, we have this broader audience. This is a message that we want everyone to pay attention to, like, who do you listen to and why do you listen to them? But also, like, in our initial development, we knew that the initial conclusion of this class, or the planned conclusion of this class, was a presentation during finals week in our home theater space in Duluth to our classmates in the theater department. And so we also were keeping all of you guys in mind in this development. And that's why, for the most part, we advertised to you guys today about this final piece. Do any of the rest of us have anything to say about this piece and our time together?
I think one of the coolest parts of this whole project, even before COVID-19 took over our whole lives, is that we all like, I don't want to say collaborated well, because that's the point of the class, but I really felt like we were all on the same wavelength for a lot of it. And I think that we were really lucky in getting a group of people that are, for the most part, pretty flexible, because not every group that sets out to, do this kind of project on this kind of scale gets that same thing. Not to say that we were like pushovers or that people were getting walked on, but like I remember on our last day of actual class, we had this really intense energy, because we had finally seen something that we had done get staged and there were people in it. And I remember just this feeling of community and this sense of togetherness in a way. And I think it's been really interesting that we've been able to keep that up, even though we are all not together anymore. Like literally none of us are together. And yet we still were able to, pull this off. I don't know. I think it's kind of a testament to human nature or something. I'm getting on a tangent, but that's
I'd second that. I'd say that, something I think I personally was mourning the most when everything shut down was being in the room with you guys, because that collaboration of, we would show up to class on Tuesdays and Thursdays and just kind of think, okay, and say like, okay, what have people been thinking about? What have people been working on? And then start just like creating theater. And it was in a way that was like, for me, felt so new and refreshing. And so to not have that anymore was really sad. But then also like something that's been really helpful to have these last few weeks is this collaboration and to continue to create this piece and know that this play is still existing in some form, even though it wasn't what we initially planned.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like, as people who work in theater, I think it's more rare that we like have to create something without a script. We're so used to having a text first and then build from that. So it was like a really new challenge to start with absolutely nothing and then kind of like having all these different people that you don't necessarily all know quite well, and then having to create something from that and kind of make sure we're all in the same like mindset with things. So like kind of like Mia said, I felt like as like the class went on, we felt more connected and we kind of all had the same idea for things. And that was a cool thing about like not starting with text and like looking at research images and doing and just like bouncing back and forth and like just building this idea and then building text and then doing all of like the design work was really cool. Yeah, and then going online and like our goals changing and then still figuring out how to make things work was like a really cool experience.
Mm-hmm. So we're about at an hour for this talk back. So this is where I'm gonna wrap things up. I want to reiterate to those of you who are still watching that this play is a living document still. We don't really intend to ever stop working and fiddling with this thing. We don't know what its next phase in life is going to look like. But linked in the description of this live stream and the last live stream is a link to a Google form for some feedback. So if you have any additional thoughts, we're also, not married to our working title of The Legend of the Red City. So if you have title suggestions, leave them in the comments or on the Google form. There's a spot for it too.
Please give us ideas.
Yeah,
please.
We recognize the like cliche soundingness of that title. So yeah, thank you all again for watching tonight. And yeah, respond to that Google form, leave your comments, keep making theater, keep living life. Stay healthy, stay safe. Good night.